First contact and miscalculation. The Veridan fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, their massive ships gleaming under the distant sun's light. Aboard the command vessel, High Commander Xalter observed the blue-green world on the main view screen with a mix of curiosity and dismissal. Earth, as the natives called it, was just another planet in just another system. One of thousands the Veridan Dominion had cataloged in their expansion across the galaxy. Begin standard observation protocols, Xalter ordered, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he studied the readings. This species has barely reached their own moon. Primitive technology, still burning fossil fuels, and engaged in constant territorial disputes, typical of pre-unification civilizations. Second Commander Illyria moved closer to the display, her slender form casting a shadow across the holographic data. There's something unusual in these readings, Commander. Their technological advancement curve is erratic. Most species follow a predictable pattern, but these humans seem to leap forward in massive bursts, especially during times of conflict. Interesting, but irrelevant, Xalter replied. They've only just discovered nuclear fission. They pose no threat to a Dominion battlecruiser. The Veridan had encountered dozens of species at similar development stages, and the pattern was always the same. Initial resistance followed by quick submission once the primitives understood the futility of fighting against a civilization that had mastered interstellar travel millennia ago. The Veridan didn't conquer, they uplifted less advanced species into their dominion, a process that had worked flawlessly for over 3,000 years. Prepare a first contact team, Xalter commanded. Standard protocol. We'll demonstrate our power over one of their major cities, then offer protection in exchange for resources and integration. The Veridan ships moved into Earth orbit, their cloaking technology rendering them invisible to the primitive human detection systems, or so they believed. Deep within No-Raid's headquarters beneath Cheyenne Mountain, Dr. Elena Reyes stared at her monitor in disbelief. The experimental quantum fluctuation detector she'd developed, a project most of her colleagues had dismissed as a waste of resources, was showing clear signatures of massive objects entering Earth orbit. General, she called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. We have company. General William Hayes moved quickly to her station, his weathered face betraying no emotion as he studied the readings. You're certain these aren't satellites or space junk? Positive, sir. These objects are massive, each one roughly the size of an aircraft carrier, and they're moving with precision that defies conventional physics. They're also emitting energy signatures unlike anything we've ever recorded. This isn't ours, and it isn't Russian or Chinese either. Hayes nodded once, then reached for the secure phone. Get me the president. Within hours, militaries across the globe were quietly mobilizing. Unlike the chaotic panics depicted in science fiction films, the world's governments had established protocols for this exact scenario decades ago. Protocols that were now being executed with grim efficiency. Aboard his ship, Xalter watched with mild surprise as human military installations worldwide began showing signs of activity. They've detected us. Impossible. Their technology is at least a century away from being able to penetrate our cloaking fields. It appears they have, Commander, Illyria replied, her tone respectful but insistent, and they're responding in a coordinated fashion across their entire planet. This suggests they may have prepared for extraterrestrial contact. Xalter dismissed her concerns with a wave of his hand. Irrelevant. Begin the demonstration. The largest Veridan vessel moved into position above New York City. As it decloaked, panic erupted in the streets below. The ship, nearly 3 miles long and shaped like a massive arrowhead, cast a shadow over Manhattan as it hovered a mere 1,000 feet above the skyscrapers. Xalter's voice boomed across every electronic device in the city, translated into the major human languages by the ship's advanced systems. People of Earth, we are the Veridan. Your planet is now under our protection. Resistance is unnecessary and would only result in needless suffering. We offer you advancement, security, and a place within our dominion. The response came not from New York, from a coordinated global action. As if rehearsed, military bases across Earth launched what appeared to be primitive missiles toward the Veridan ships. Saltar actually laughed. Activate defensive shields. Let them see how futile their weapons are against our technology. But these weren't conventional missiles. As they approached the Veridan vessels, they detonated prematurely, releasing clouds of seemingly harmless metallic particles that drifted toward the alien ships. "What is this?" Salter demanded. "Some kind of primitive countermeasure." Alarms suddenly blared across the command deck as ship systems began failing one after another. The metallic cloud had worked its way into the ship's external sensor arrays and cooling systems, causing cascading failures throughout the fleet. "Impossible," Salter muttered as his mighty warship began to lose power. "They couldn't have known our vulnerabilities." But the humans hadn't known. They had guessed, prepared for multiple scenarios, and acted decisively when the moment came. What the Veridan didn't understand was that humanity had been imagining this encounter for centuries, playing out countless scenarios in their fiction, their military simulations, and their scientific discussions. As the Veridan ships struggled with failing systems, Earth's militaries launched their second wave, electromagnetic pulse weapons specifically designed to exploit the disruption caused by the first attack. The Veridan's shields, dependent on the now compromised sensor network, flickered and failed. "Full retreat," Salter ordered, his confidence shattered. "Regroup at the outer system boundary." The Veridan fleet limped away from Earth, most ships operating on emergency power. As they retreated, Salter stared at the blue planet with new respect and growing concern. How did they do this? He demanded of his science officers. How could a species that hasn't even colonized their own system mount such an effective defense? The answer came from an unexpected source, the ship's cultural database. As the Veridan analyzed human communications they had intercepted, a pattern emerged. Humans had been telling stories about alien invasions for over a century, imagining countless scenarios, weaknesses, and countermeasures. They'd been preparing for us without even knowing we exist, Illyria realized. Their fiction, their entertainment, it's all been a form of psychological and strategic preparation. Salter studied the human military response with growing alarm. Nations that had been bitter enemies for decades were now coordinating their efforts seamlessly. Chinese fighter jets were protecting American cities. Russian submarines were defending European coastlines. The entire planet had united against the external threat with a speed that defied all Veridan models of social behavior. "We need to understand them better before we attempt another approach," Salter decided. "Begin deep surveillance. I want to know everything about how these humans think, how they fight, and most importantly, how they've achieved this level of adaptability." As the Veridan retreated to the edges of the solar system to lick their wounds and reconsider their approach, humanity prepared for the inevitable return. In underground facilities around the world, scientists and military strategists worked feverishly to develop new weapons and defenses based on what they had learned from the first encounter. What had begun as a routine uplift mission for the Veridan had turned into something unprecedented, the first serious military challenge they had faced in over a millennium. And on Earth, humanity had just discovered that they were not alone in the universe, and that they were far more capable than anyone, including themselves, had ever imagined. The battle for Earth had only just begun. The turning point and revelation. 3 months after the first contact, the Veridan returned in force. The fleet that appeared at the edge of the solar system was 3 times larger than before, 15 massive battlecruisers accompanied by dozens of smaller vessels. This was no longer a simple uplift mission. This was a full military operation aimed at bringing the troublesome humans to heel. On Earth, the response was immediate but controlled. The panic that might have occurred was replaced by grim determination. In the months since the Veridan's first appearance, humanity had been busy. In a hardened bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, representatives from every major nation gathered around a holographic display showing the approaching alien fleet. Dr. Elena Rice pointed to the formation of ships. They're staying farther out this time, beyond the orbit of Mars. They've learned their lesson about getting too close. General Hayes nodded. And we've learned that they'll be back with a bigger stick. Are we ready? The Chinese general, Lin Wei, gestured to the display. The orbital defense network is at 85% completion. It won't stop them completely, but it will slow them down. And Project Prometheus? Hayes asked, turning to the Russian scientist, Dr. Petrov. Ready for deployment, Petrov confirmed. Whether it works as intended, that we will discover together. The Veridan fleet approached methodically, their sensors extended to maximum range, scanning for any signs of the strange countermeasures the humans had deployed during the first encounter. High Commander Salter had spent the intervening months studying everything the Dominion knew about humanity, and he had come to a disturbing conclusion. Humans were fundamentally different from any species the Veridan had encountered before. Most species evolved toward cooperation and stability, he explained to his war council. Their technological progress follows predictable patterns based on resource availability and social organization. Humans are aberrant. They thrive on conflict. Their greatest technological leaps have come during or immediately after their wars. They do not seek harmony. They achieve advancement through competition and crisis. A dangerous species, one of the council members observed. Dangerous, yes, Zalter agreed, but still primitive. We underestimated their adaptability before. We will not make that mistake again. This time, we will not offer them a place in the Dominion. This time, we will demonstrate our full power and force their submission. The Veridan fleet moved forward, approaching Earth with weapons charged. The first shots came from the humans, a series of high-energy laser blasts from their hastily constructed orbital defense platforms. The beams splashed harmlessly against the Veridan shields. Zalter smiled. As expected, return fire. The Veridan battlecruisers fired in unison, their energy weapons destroying the human platforms one after another. Within minutes, Earth's first line of defense was reduced to drifting debris. Begin the main assault, Salter commanded. Target their military installations first, then their power generation facilities. The Veridan ships launched thousands of automated attack drones toward Earth, each programmed to seek out and destroy specific targets. This was a standard Veridan tactic: overwhelm the enemy with numbers while the main fleet remained safely out of range. But as the drones entered Earth's atmosphere, something unexpected happened. They began to fail, their guidance systems going haywire, causing them to crash harmlessly into the ocean or uninhabited areas. What's happening? Salter demanded. Unknown, Commander, his tactical officer replied. Some kind of interference is affecting our drone guidance systems. On Earth, in labs across the globe, scientists monitored the effectiveness of the quantum field disruptors they had developed based on technology reverse-engineered from the debris left behind after the first encounter. It wasn't a perfect defense. About 20% of the drones were still functioning, but it was enough to blunt the main thrust of the Veridan attack. Zalter's eyes narrowed. Move the fleet into low orbit. We'll conduct the assault directly. The massive Veridan ships descended toward Earth, their weapons targeting military bases, power plants, and communication centers. The damage was severe. Entire cities lost power, military installations were destroyed, and thousands of lives were lost. But even as the attack continued, the humans were responding in ways the Veridan had not anticipated. Instead of focusing on defense, human militaries launched a coordinated counterstrike. Submarines surfaced just long enough to launch specially designed missiles. Stealth aircraft released swarms of small, nearly undetectable drones. And in orbit, 6 experimental spacecraft that had been hidden on the far side of the moon moved into attack position. The human counterattack focused not on trying to destroy the nearly indestructible Veridan ships, but on exploiting the weakness they had discovered during the first encounter: the ship's external sensor arrays and cooling systems. The attack was precise, coordinated, and devastatingly effective. Aboard his flagship, Salter watched in disbelief as ship after ship reported critical system failures. How are they doing this? How could they have developed countermeasures so quickly? The answer came from Illyria, who had been studying human communication patterns. They're sharing information at an unprecedented rate, Commander. Nations that were enemies are freely exchanging technologies and strategies. They've created a global research network that's working around the clock to develop ways to fight us. But they're still using primitive technologies, Zaltar protested. Their most advanced weapons are still based on chemical propellants and nuclear fission. It's not their technology, Illyria replied quietly. It's how they use it. They're adaptable in ways we haven't seen before. They don't fight like any species we've encountered. The truth of her words became apparent as the battle continued. Human forces didn't retreat when their bases were destroyed. They adapted, using mobile command centers and decentralized communications to continue coordinating their attacks. When the Veridan adjusted their shields to block the frequencies of human weapons, the humans quickly shifted to different attack methods. And then came Project Prometheus. From a hidden base in the Ural Mountains, Russian scientists activated the device they had built based on theoretical physics that most of the scientific community had dismissed as impossible just months earlier. The device created a localized disruption in space-time, not powerful enough to damage the Veridan ships directly, but precisely calibrated to interfere with their faster-than-light communications. Suddenly cut off from each other and from their tactical network, the Veridan ships could no longer coordinate their attacks. What had been a precisely orchestrated assault became a series of individual battles where human ingenuity and adaptability began to turn the tide. Zaltar watched in growing horror as his mighty fleet was systematically disabled by a species that, by all rights, should have been conquered within hours. 3 of his battle cruisers were already dead in space, their crews evacuating in lifeboats. 4 more were reporting critical damage to their propulsion systems. Full retreat, he ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. Get us out of this system. But retreat was no longer possible for many of the Veridan ships. Their FTL drives, requiring precise calculations that could only be performed through their now disrupted network, were offline. They were stranded in Earth's orbit, at the mercy of the humans they had come to conquer. As the few functional Veridan ships limped away from Earth, Salter faced the most difficult decision of his long life. The Dominion protocols were clear. If a species proved too dangerous to uplift, they were to be quarantined or eliminated. But elimination would require a force many times larger than what he had brought. A force the Dominion might not be willing to commit once they learned of this defeat. Send the signal, he finally ordered. Full report to the Dominion Council. Request instructions. The response, when it came days later, surprised him. Instead of ordering a full-scale invasion or quarantine, the Council commanded Saltar to open negotiations with the humans. The Veridan, for the first time in their 3,000-year expansion, had encountered a species they could not easily dominate, a species that might, in fact, eventually threaten the Dominion itself. The negotiations took place aboard the International Space Station, which had been hastily modified to accommodate the physiological needs of the Veridan representatives. Saltar found himself facing a panel of human leaders, military commanders, scientists, and politicians, all watching him with a mix of caution and curiosity. We did not come here to destroy you, Salter began, the words feeling strange in his mouth. The Veridan never explained themselves to lesser species. We came to offer you a place in our dominion, to guide your development as we have guided dozens of other species. General Hayes leaned forward. And when we declined your offer, you tried to force us to accept. It is the way of the universe, Salter replied. The strong lead, the weak follow. It has always been so. Dr. Reyes spoke next, her voice calm but firm. Perhaps that's how it's been in your experience, Commander. But humans don't accept that kind of relationship. We never have. Not with each other, and certainly not with visitors from another world. The negotiations continued for days, with both sides feeling their way through the unprecedented situation. The humans, despite their victory, did not press for unconditional surrender. They seemed more interested in understanding the Veridan and the wider galactic community they represented. Finally, a framework was established. The Veridan would withdraw from the Sol system, acknowledging it as sovereign human territory. In exchange, humans would not pursue the retreating Veridan fleet and would consider potential diplomatic relations in the future. It was not an alliance. Trust was in too short supply for that, but it was a recognition of mutual respect born from battle. As Saltar prepared to depart with the remains of his once mighty fleet, he had one final conversation with Dr. Reyes. "You should know," he told her, "that the galaxy is not a peaceful place. There are species far more aggressive than the Veridan, empires far less inclined to negotiation. You have won a battle, but the challenges ahead are greater than you can imagine." Reyes smiled. "That's what everyone told us when we dreamed of flying, of going to the moon, of curing diseases that had plagued us for centuries. It's impossible," they said. "The challenges are too great. But here's the thing about humans, Commander Zalter. We don't respond well to being told what we can't do." As the Veridan ships disappeared into the depths of space, humanity turned its gaze to the stars with new purpose. The knowledge that they were not alone in the universe, and that they could hold their own against advanced civilizations, changed everything. In the decades that followed, humanity's progress accelerated at a pace that astonished even the most optimistic observers. The technology reverse-engineered from the damaged Veridan ships catapulted human science forward by centuries. The global cooperation forged in the crucible of invasion led to a new era of peace and shared purpose. And on distant Veridan, the Dominion Council studied reports of human advancement with growing concern. They had encountered something unprecedented, a species that thrived on challenge, that united in the face of external threats, and that adapted at a rate that defied all historical models. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Veridan Dominion faced a fundamental question. What do you do when you discover that you are not, in fact, the apex civilization? What do you do when you realize that the primitives you once dismissed might one day surpass you? The answer, much to their dismay, would be determined not by them, but by the humans they had failed to conquer. Humans who were already building their first true interstellar vessels, their eyes fixed on the stars, and their minds filled with possibilities that even the ancient Veridan had never dared to imagine. In galactic databases throughout known space, Earth's classification was quietly updated. No longer listed as a pre-unification developing world, it now bore a designation that only 3 other planets in the known galaxy shared. Approach with extreme caution. Diplomatic contact only. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and nothing would ever be the same again.